I'm sorry, family. This is part 2 of that first video we were doing with Jake LaMotta and Ray Robinson. And I was saying that Ray Robinson got the name Sugar from a newspaper editor or a reporter by the name of Jack Case. And he said, "That's a sweet-looking fighter you have there," to George Gangford. Gangford said, "Yes, he's sweet as sugar." And Ray Robinson was born as Sugar Ray Robinson. Phenomenal fighter he was. The Raging Bull, Jake LaMotta, one of the toughest fighters in boxing history. First time he was knocked down and knocked out was against a light heavyweight by the name of Danny Nordico. Danny Nordico, as quiet as it's kept, had one of the greatest fights in boxing history with Charlie Norkus. And that first fight is what got them the second fight. They had a rematch. Second fight wasn't as entertaining as the first fight. Both men were knocked down several times. But that Charlie Norkus and Danny Nordico fight was a classic. And Jake LaMotta would be knocked down for the very first time and out by Danny Nordico. Jake LaMotta and Sugar Ray Robinson were tailor-made for each other because one was a boxer and one was a walk-in brawler, two-fisted puncher. But Jake LaMotta was as tough as they came. And Ray Robinson had a funny feeling that Jake LaMotta, who walked around overweight majority of his career, because you got to keep in mind, Jake LaMotta was originally a light heavyweight. As far back as the amateurs, he would win the light heavyweight diamond belt championship in 1939. And Ray Robinson would win the Golden Gloves featherweight championship belt in 1939. Remarkable. And they would meet at middleweight. This is one of the greatest ring classics in boxing history. So Ray Robinson would turn professional in 1940. He would defeat Jake LaMotta in 1951. He would lose his middleweight championship strap 7 fights later to England's Randy Turpin. In 1951. And that's what this video was about. It was a jinx between 1940 and 1941. As we'll find out with our next fighter, Ezzard Charles. But Ray Robinson would get his title back in New York's Polo Grounds with a knockout in a fight he was behind with Randy Turpin. Phenomenal story. Ray Robinson was some fighter. Let's take a look at Ezzard Charles. Greatest fighter pound for pound. The great Sugar Ray Robinson. I'll tell you, that war with Kid Gavilan was incredible. Ray Robinson was in some wars. But he had the faster hands and the faster feet. And while Gavilan was bolo punching, Ray Robinson was shooting straight jabs, straight right hands, and quadruple left hooks. Ray Robinson takes on Henry Armstrong, his idol, New York's Madison Square Garden, 1943. Sad night, passing of the torch of these two great fighters. The Garden booed Ray Robinson, 1943, because of their love for the great Henry Armstrong. Phenomenal. Just phenomenal. Ezzard Charles turned professional in 1940 after a phenomenal amateur career. And he was in the ring with some great fighters, was Ezzard Charles. Ezzard Charles was born July 7th, 1921, Lawrenceville, Georgia. He died in Cincinnati, Ohio. He was 53 years of age at the time of his death. And he died May 28, 1975. Now, I met Ray Robinson, and I saw Ezzard Charles. I was too young to really appreciate him. He was in a wheelchair. It was probably about a year or 9 months before he passed away. He couldn't talk. But as I got a little older, I began to appreciate. Didn't quite remember the details. My dad took me to see him. And to me at that time, he was just a man in a wheelchair. He told me who Ezzard Charles was. Until I began to really study boxing. I didn't quite appreciate it at the time. But Ezzard Charles, one of the greatest fighters in boxing history. He's known as the Cincinnati Cobra. An amateur record of 42-0. 1937, he would win a Diamond Belt Championship in Ohio AAU welterweight division. 1938, he would win a Diamond Belt welterweight championship in Ohio AAU welterweight division. 1939, Diamond Belt middleweight champion. Chicago Golden Gloves, the tournament in the middleweight division. Would also win the national AAU middleweight championships. They fought Rocky Marciano and Joe Walcott, Joe Louis. And the men he faced in the Black Murderers Row, who's who? Archie Moore. He would face Charlie Burley, Jimmy Bivens, Oakland Billy Smith, Lloyd Marshall. He fought Jimmy Bivens 4 times and Joey Maxim 5 times. February 20th, 1948, he fought a man by the name of Sammy Baruti. Chicago Stadium. It was a 10-round knockout. And when he caught Sam Baruti with a straight right hand, Baruti went down and his head was on a second strand and it flopped down to the last strand. And he was counting himself out. Nerve damage. And Sam Baruti used to come into Stillman's gym saying, "I'm hitting hard today." And he would point to somebody in the ring and tell him to stay right there. I'll be right back. He was a kidder. He was a joker. Very hard-working man in the gym, as my father would state to me. Because Sam Baruti's locker was right next to my dad's locker. R.I.P. to Sam Baruti. R.I.P. to Ezzard Charles. Charles would fight Anton Christopoulos. Ken Overland, Pat Valentino, Harold Johnson, Tommy Harrison, Caesar Brion, Rex Lane, Lee Ulmer, Elmer Violin Ray, Moses Brown and Booker Beckworth, Teddy Huroth, just to name a few. He would face Joe Walcott 3 times, Rocky Marciano twice in 1954, Joe Louis in 1950 to solidify his heavyweight championship belt. He'd be in the ring with Pat Valentino, Caesar Brion, Tommy Hurricane Jackson, Bob Satterfield. Shout out to Ezzard Charles, the greatest fighters of all times. And as I stated, he would turn professional in 1940 and lose his heavyweight championship belt to the man to your right, Jersey Joe Walcott, in 1951. That's the distinction between him and Ray Robinson, him and Willie Pep, and him and Ike Williams. Shout out to Eddie Charles. Joe Louis would be retired in 1951, New York's Madison Square Garden. Rocky Marciano would take him out in 8 rounds. Joe Louis should have retired, went to pay his dues to Uncle Sam. Sad night in New York's Madison Square Garden. With Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano. And this would give Rocky Marciano heavyweight championship opportunity with Jersey Joe Walcott. Salute to Joe Louis and Rocky Marciano in 1951, New York's Madison Square Garden. Ezzard Charles, Jersey Joe Walcott would have 3 ring wars. And Walcott in this fight would become the oldest heavyweight champion at that time. Boxing history. Ike Williams, one of the greatest lightweight champions of all times, fought out of Trenton, New Jersey. And he returned professional in 1940. He himself had an extensive amateur career. And he would win the lightweight championship belt from Juan Zarita of Mexico. My grandfather tells me a story about Jimmy Carter, who had moved to Harlem off of 103rd Street on the east side. My grandfather was a numbers runner. He knew everyone on the block, and everyone knew who he was. So on his way upstairs, he asked Jimmy Carter to come see him. Carter didn't know what he wanted. So when Carter came upstairs, my grandfather asked him, did he want a drink? Jimmy Carter cleverly said no thank you, and had him sit down and said, I understand you're fighting Ike Williams. He said, yes, I am. He said, can you beat Ike Williams? He said, yes, I can. He said, no, you don't understand. I have a lot of money riding on this. Can you beat Ike Williams? Because Ike Williams was tied to Blinky Polano, Philadelphia's mob crime family. Now, he wasn't tied to him, but they were tied to him. And my grandfather told me he put up $2,000 at that time in 1951. And he said, yes, I'm going to knock him out. He said, that's all I need to know. These two men would get it on. And it would be an upset in the making. And a block party would be thrown all up and down Harlem for Jimmy Carter. That was what you call the passing of the torch. Because Ike Williams would be in the ring with Enrique Bolaños, another great of his time. And there would be some controversy in that Bolaños fight. Many thought Enrique Bolaños had defeated Ike Williams. They fought 3 times. Enrique Bolaños was an outstanding Mexican fighter. Phenomenal fighter he was. But Ike Williams had a war with Bojack in 1948. Bojack threw a bolo punch and knocked out the front of Ike Williams' tooth, side front tooth. And I'll tell you, Ike Williams put the beating on Bojack that night. And I want to salute Ike Williams. The distinguished with him, he turned professional in 1940 and lost his crown in 1951. And it was to this man to your right, Jimmy Carter. Willie Pep to your right and Sandy Sadler to your left. These two men fought four times. They fought 4 times, excuse me. And Ray Miller, who I met, told me about that fight. And that was the reason why, at least one of the 2 reasons why Willie Pep was suspended. Rough tactics. And he felt as though he threw a fight with Lulu Perez. But Willie Pep survived a plane crash. I mean, it's amazing in 50, and he wound up winning a featherweight championship belt. I don't know why I'm tongue twisted today. From Sandy Sadler, and then Sandy Sadler would dethrone Willie Pep in 1951. Now, Willie Pep turned professional in 1940 after an extensive amateur career, as did Ezra Charles and as did Sugar Ray Robinson. His distinction is that he lost his belt in 1951 to this man here, Sandy Sadler. So I just thought that was ironic, and I wanted to bring that to your attention. So salute to these fighters. Willie Pep, Sugar Ray Robinson, Ezra Charles. Salute to the great fighter Sandy Sadler, and Jersey Joe Walcott. Mike Williams and Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Bivens. Jake LaMotta. Bojack. Just a few fighters that I'm thinking about in 1940. Salute. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series, all great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Salute to Black History Month. Salute to these great fighters. Peace.